Good afternoon to everyone. It's my pleasure indeed before you, as I am remembering my young days when I was also a student. But as a student in law subject, we must be a student forever till our death, because law is such a ocean. Nobody can, in my opinion, come across that ocean during his lifetime even. I've been requested to tell you over social justice. Now, you know the social justice, the meaning, because nowadays you must have gone to the internet, etc., etc. Many things you can find out from the internet. But if you ask me what is social justice, in the light of our constitution, our laws in India, the judgments, and thereafter the development of the laws from time to time, I would say rather it's an expression of humanity through your law. Now let us see the concept of the social justice, what it is. As we have found that the constitution has given many facets with regard to the social justice to us. The two main vital things which are given under the constitution is, one is right to citizen, and the other one directive principles. So if you see or go through all this, then you can understand what is really social justice mean. There is no definition has been given in law with regard to this social justice. But as I have been able to find out, this concept of social justice and the term, which was first used in 1840 by a Sicilian priest and given prominence by Antonio Rosmini Salvetti in La Constituzione Civile Secondo la Sociale in 1848. It has also enjoyed a significant audience amongst theorists since John Rawls' book, A Theory of Justice, has used for distribution of the justice to do good to the people, and that's the concept, in my opinion, can be taken as the concept of social justice, which is a revolutionary concept which provides meaning and significance to life and makes the rule of law dynamic. When Indian society seeks to meet the challenge of socio-economic inequality by its legislation, and with the assistance of the rule of law, it seeks to achieve economic justice without any violent conflict. The ideal of a welfare state postulates unceasing pursuit of the doctrine of social justice. That is the significance and importance of the concept of social justice in the Indian context today. The idea of welfare state is that the claims of social justice must be treated as cardinal and paramount. Social justice is not a blind concept or a preposterous dogma. It seeks to do justice to all the citizens of the state. Democracy, therefore, must not show any excess by imposing unnecessary legislative regulations and prohibitions. In the same way as they must not show timidity in attacking the problem of the inequality by refusing the past the necessary and reasonable regularity measures at all. Constant endeavor has to be made to sustain individual freedom and liberty and subject them to reasonable regulation and control as to achieve socio-economic justice. Social justice must be achieved by adopting necessary and reasonable measures. That, shortly stated, is the concept of social justice and its implications. Citizens, jealous of their individual freedom and liberty, must cooperate with the democracy which seeks to regulate freedom and liberty in the interest of social good, but they must be able to resist the imposition of any restraints on individual liberty and freedom which are not rationally and reasonably required in the interest of public good in a democratic way. It is in the light of these difficult times that the rule of law comes into operation, and the judiciary have to play their role without fear or favor, uninfluenced by any consideration of dogma or isms. The term of social justice is a blanket term so as to include both social justice and economic justice. In the Indian context, the term social justice must be understood in a comprehensive sense so as to include both economic and social justice. The concept of social justice should therefore mean the removing of every inequality must be afforded to all the citizens equal opportunities in our social affairs as well as economic activities. In every walk of life that must come and to be achieved by the citizens of this country. The problem of poverty died up with the vice of social inequality exists in a gross form in all our villages. Some of our brothers are suffering from dual curse of economic and social inequalities. They constitute large class of landless laborers who are treated as untouchables by the rest of the community, who have no roof over their head, no apparel to proclaim, not enough food to eat, even sometimes find difficult to have their drinking water too. That's the reason, if we look back, we'll see Swami Vivekananda realizing such difficulties said, "My heart aches to think of the conditions of the poor, the low in India. They sink lower and lower every day. They feel the blows showered upon them by a cruel society. But they do not know whence the blow comes. They have forgotten that they too are men. They have forgotten that they too are men. My heart is too full to express my feelings. So long as the millions live in a hunger and ignorance, I hold every man a traitor who, having been educated at their expenses, pays not the least heed to them. Our great national sin is the neglect of the masses, and that is the cause of our downfall. No amount of politics would be of any avail until the masses in India are once more well educated, well fed, and well cared for." Unquote. The concept of social justice in its comprehensive form regards this as a bolt on Indians' polity and seeks to remove it by legislative process. All steps taken by the Indian legislatures with a view to solving this problem of socio-economic inequality are based on the doctrine of social justice. Let us never forget ever that our own conception of democracy, no matter how earnestly venerated by ourselves, is of little importance to men whose immediate concern is preservation of physical life. Notions of individual freedom and liberty are apt to sound as empty words. Hunger might have been the silent enemy of man. Starvation might have been the silent way of death, but it cannot be so for all time. Instead of silence, it can mean resounding roar of violence. Hunger makes men impatient and angry. Impatience and anger lead to blindness, and all ugly distempers make an orderly life impossible. In the struggle to overcome this poverty, people have hardly time to appreciate the theoretical significance and grandeur of the concept of individual freedom and liberty. To better the lot of those people in the huts and villages across the great subcontinent, meaning thereby our country, struggling to break the bonds of misery, social justice must pledge its best efforts to help them in order to help the common good of humanity. The concept of social justice is thus a revolutionary concept. It gives meaning and significance to the democratic way of life and makes the rule of law dynamic. It is this concept of social justice which creates in the minds of the masses of this country a sense of participation in the glory of India's political freedom. For the first time, the Constitution of India guaranteed fundamental rights under Chapter 3 of the Constitution. One could call this part as dealing with social equality and individual freedom. You must have seen the Article 14, which is a shining star among the fundamental rights. It guarantees equality before the law and equal protection of laws to all the persons in India. It acknowledges thereby that all men are created equal and are endowed with certain inalienable rights. The article rings a death knell to irrational discrimination. The doctrine of equality before law is a necessary correlative to the high concept of rule of law. It includes at least three distinct, though kindred conceptions. According to Dicey, no man is punishable except for a distinguished breach of law established in the ordinary legal manner before the ordinary courts of land. Second, no man is above the law. And thirdly, the law is what the court declares. Article 14 constitutes the genus, while the species are found in Article 15. It prohibits discrimination against any citizen on the ground of race, religion, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them. But having regard to the long history of India and the social conditions that are prevalent, it makes special provision for women, children, and for the advancement of society and economically backward classes. Under Clause 2 of the Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Act, you'll see it is not a case of bringing about any inequality. It has to be viewed in the context of reality of the situation. The existing inequalities call for unequal treatment so that the equality may be achieved ultimately. This is protective discrimination. On this basis, reservations are made in educational institutions and in favor of the weaker sections of the society. Likewise, if we see Article 16, which guarantees equality of opportunities for all citizens in matters relating to employment under the state by prohibiting discrimination on the grounds of only religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, etc. Here again, reservations are permitted in favor of any backward class of citizens which in the opinion of the state is not adequately represented in the services under the state. This is an exception to Article 29, which prohibits denial of admission to any citizen into any educational institution maintained by the state or receiving aid out of the state funds on grounds only of religion, race, caste, language, or any of them. From this point of view, in social justice, the article which has been stated in the Constitution is Article 17, which says untouchability is abolished and its practice in any form is forbidden. This echoes the great sentiments of the various leaders of our country. Muhammad Tilak, in fact, said, quote, "If God ordained untouchability, I will not recognize that God," unquote. Mahatma Gandhi said, quote, "If untouchability is to be regarded as a part of Hinduism, I cease to be a Hindu," unquote. He again said, quote, "It is wrong. It is sinful to consider some people lower than ourselves," unquote. The special provisions of the Constitution, which we have also noted, we have seen Articles 330 and 332 of the Constitution with regard to the reservation of the seats in the House of the people as well as in the legislative assemblies of the states. Under Article 335, this reservation is to continue as has been stated by the Constitution as per the 45th Amendment of the Constitution. Likewise, the with regard to the services and post reservations also would be available under Article 335. In addition to all these fundamental rights, the founder of the Constitution incorporated Part 4 as well, containing directive principles. Though they are not enforceable in a court of law like the fundamental rights, yet it shall be the duty of states to follow the same, both in the matter of administration as well as in the making of the laws. They embodied the aims and objects of the state under the Republic Constitution. For an example, that it is a welfare state and not a mere police state. Therefore, they could be called ideals to be cherished, policies to be pursued, and goals to be accomplished. Social justice is needed for the betterment of culture, economic and socially weakest section of the general community, and the constitutional reflection of the same is found in Article 38, which directs the creation of a social order in which justice, social, economic and political shall inform all the institutions of national life. Supreme Court in the year 1980 stated in Ratlam Municipality versus Bardichan, I quote, in paragraph 14 of reported at AIR 1980 Supreme Court 1622, quote, in interpreting and applying section 133 of the Criminal Procedure Code and allied municipal laws, court should have regard to the directive in Article 38 to promote welfare of the people and social justice, so that where a municipality has failed to fill the conditions of drains, etc. in slums, the court should make a positive and mandatory order directing the municipality to remove the public nuisance within a given time, irrespective of the financial resources of the municipality. I must tell you, this decision also, there are certain other decisions came through the courts, including our Calcutta High Court. In that, you must the puja is nearing. At that, once the court passed an order directing that nothing should be thrown to the Ganges. Everything has to be kept out, excepting the idol should be down in the Ganges. But why this order was passed by the court? It is only for the benefit of the public at large, because you can understand the environment, if it is pollute the environment, because water is necessary in our life. Ganges, which is coming for such a long time in our everyday's life, if it goes, if it is contaminated, the people who are really living on this Ganges, besides it, they will suffer more than a person who is living in the city. So that also should be taken into account. At the time of passing that order, the court thought that would be proper for the court to pass such order. And in fact, Calcutta Municipal Corporation, in terms of the order, had taken steps in the matter. And we are sure that the said order is time to time has been extended by the High Court even in the last year. And I am also sure that this year also must be that order will be passed. Even in Hyderabad, there is only one water pot is there at Himayat Nagar. And it is very difficult to get water in that region during the summer. So order was passed by the High Court in that there also for taking care of reservation of those water and to take steps in the matter accordingly. This is done only for the necessity. Why it is necessity? It is necessary for the purpose of having the drinking water through purification and to be supplied to the persons who are residing there. So therefore it is also a betterment for the society at large. And as you know, the law has been made for the purpose which can serve to the citizen of India. Now, you may ask the question why it is for the citizen of India, why it is not for something else. Now, who suffers? The first question comes in your mind. The persons who are really enjoying all these things, they will suffer. Because as we learned from the very beginning in our young days, that water is your second life. Without water we cannot live. So that's the reason a step has been taken first to get better water. Now if you see Article 21, if you connect that with Article 21, then you cannot get that answer, because the Constitution has given us liberty to life. Now what life we want? Is it that yes, we have, our heart is pumping blood and we are there, so that liberty is given to us by that process? The answer will be no, because there are certain things has to be in the life and which is necessary. Nowadays, many things which we could not think earlier, in early days, has becoming, it is necessary for the life. So all those things are coming as a liberty to the citizen of this country. So that is the reason they say Article 21 has a great implication in law, so far we are concerned. Then we will come to Article 46, which makes a noble announcement that the state shall promote with special care with regard to the educational and the economic interest of the weaker section of the people. So all these things has been done only to raise the persons who are poor, weaker section, cannot come to the at par with others, to bring them at a level where they can stand and they can fight out with others. That is the reason Article 48 has been given. For this economic interest and educational interest, they must now, also Right to Education Act has come. So many things are coming in between which are helping us to get a better life in future. Even if you ask the air, if you are not getting a purified air, there is some construction which is standing in your way, then automatically you can go to the court to ask for your liberty. High trees case. All these things has been done keeping in mind the social interest, the social justice to be made to the public at large. This which is this is the signature tune of the Indian Constitution, even as fundamental human rights are the key notes of the Charter of the United Nations, which this social justice cries for fulfillment, while all political levels, human rights levels included, are ailing for the state power or arguing for judicial justice, mindless of the horror of living death of fellow human beings. The heart of social justice is law with a heart, a humanistic jurisprudence sensitive to the disabled sector, a versatile legal technology rich with substantive rules, operational processes, and sympathetic personal judicative and executive, ready to give relief in the spirit of love and armed with law. I must give you some example. The old parents coming before the court, filing application. At that point of time, this act was never enacted. Then the question was whether the court was powerless at that point of time. They used to come because the sons, daughters, they are doing something which could not have been accepted by them. They were suffering. So they were lodging complaints with the police authorities. Police didn't take any steps in the matter. By way of inaction of the police, they used to come to the court under Article 226. Then court, taking into consideration of Article 21, used to pass an order favoring them that the police must take necessary steps in the matter, not only criminal under the criminal law, but also to do social justice to them. They must get back whatever they are asking for. Subsequently, the new law has come, so steps have been taken. But at that point of time, that law was not came into the operation at all. We have seen that our constitutional forefathers declared social justice as one of the central aims. If the high ideals exposed in the preambles are not to remain as mere rhetorics or high-sounding hyperboles, but should create life, the courts in India must play, according to me, a vital role. The judiciary shall not only be the sanctuary of those who have been wronged by the strong, but the benign protector of those who are weak and seek refuge against injustice and claim enforcement of human rights. It is with the great expectation they come to courts, saying that under the shadow of all the difficulties which they are facing. In this sense, the Constitution looks upon the courts as mere than the dispenser of mere legal justice. Whenever an opportunity arises, it must endeavor to secure justice, social, economic, and political. We have seen Supreme Court in K.C. Vasant Kumar versus State of Karnataka. Justice O. Chinnappa Reddy, speaking for the bench, spoke, I quote, "Ours is a country of great economic, social, and cultural diversity. Often we take great pride in the country's cultural diversity. While cultural diversity adds to the splendor of India, the others add to our sorrow and shame. The social and economic disparities are indeed despairingly vast. The scheduled caste, the scheduled tribes, and others socially and educationally backward classes, all of whom have been compendiously described as the weakest sections of the people, have long journeys to make society. They need aid, they need facility, they need launching, they need propulsion. Their needs are their demands. The demands are matters of right and not of philanthropy. They ask for parity and not charity. The days of draconian law are over. They claim their constitutional right to equality of status and of opportunity and economic and social justice. Several bridges have to be erected so that they may cross the Rubicon. Professional education and employment under the state are thought to be two such bridges. Hence the special provision for advancement and for reservation under Articles 15.4 and 16.4 of the Constitution. I unquote. The doctrine of social justice was extended again by the Supreme Court in the case of Fertilizer Corporation, Kamgar Union Sindri versus Union of India, where the Supreme Court considered the challenge and legality of the sale of certain plants and equipments of Sindri fertilizer factory by Union of Workmen. It is observed by the Supreme Court that they were not too sure if they would have refused relief to the workers if they had found that the sale was unjust, unfair, and mala-fide. In this judgment, it was recognized that workers who have an interest in the industry can bring an action regarding an alleged wrong doing by a board of management. And that is the reason you must have seen that in the Companies Act, after this, Section 529 capital A was enacted, making the laborers, the workers, their claim as well as the claim of a secured creditor of a company at par. The principle of equal pay for equal work was also deduced from Article 39D of the Constitution, even though it is not expressly declared by the Constitution to be a fundamental right. Nevertheless, the doctrine of equal pay for equal work for both men and women was held to be a constitutional goal. Reliance was placed on the preamble to the Constitution to mean equal pay for equal work. In this case, the drivers in the Delhi police force were held entitled to the same scale of pay as the drivers in the services of Delhi administration in the central government, as they perform the same functions and duties. This principle was applied in subsequent cases of Nehru Juvabandhra cases in 1986, which was the judgment which was delivered by the Supreme Court on 17th of January 1986. In its zeal to do social justice, the Supreme Court entertained the petition of 6 prisoners. You must know with regard to the Bhagalpur jail disciplined case, and the Supreme Court entertained the said petition, who were blinded when they were under trial prisoners at Bhagalpur jail in the state of Bihar, and court deprecated the most inhuman torture to which the under trial prisoners were subjected, to like piercing the eyes with needles and pouring acids into them. The jail doctors were directed to examine the prisoners and to submit a report. The prisoners were directed to be brought to Delhi for being examined at Dr. Rajendra Prasad Institute, New Delhi. It was found that the fundamental rights and safeguards provided by Articles 19 and 21 of the Constitution of India have been violated. This judgment recognizes that even the under trial prisoners are entitled to have the fundamental rights guaranteed under Article 21 of the Constitution of India. One of the major events in the judicial history of India has been fuller expression of the right to life guaranteed under the said article. This right is not merely lexical and legal, but expands as we conceptualize the dignity and divinity of human personality. If the rule of law and the rule of life run close together, a jurisprudence where a man matters more, the springs of social justice will rise then, and only then. The Constitution inscribes justice as the first promise of the Republic, which means the state power will execute the pledge of justice in favor of the millions who are the Republic. Social justice is people's justice, where the tyranny of power is transformed into the democracy of social good. Justice without power is inefficient. Power without justice is tyranny. Justice without power is opposed because there are always wicked men. Power without justice is soon questioned. Justice and power must therefore be brought together so that whatever is just may be powerful and whatever is powerful may be just. The contents of social justice was best expressed by Pandit Nehru at the dawn of our freedom. I quote, "The service of India means the service of millions who suffer. It means the ending of poverty and ignorance and disease and inequality of opportunity. The ambition of the greatest man of our generation has been to wipe every tear from every eye. That may be beyond us, but as long as there are tears and suffering, so long our work will not be over, unquote. In my opinion, if we can think in that way, I am sure that a day will come and it would be in true sense, we would be able to say that social justice, the ideological signature of our constitution, is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or Loka Samastha Sukhino Bhavantu, which is the fingerprint of our cultural heritage. Thank you. Thank you.
You've just heard a wonderful lecture from Justice Pinaki Ghosh of the Supreme Court. I don't know whether I can add anything to it, but I've been requested to speak for a couple of minutes. We in India have chosen a form of governance which is called democracy. If you have ever studied Plato, you will recall that he had recommended, or rather he had mentioned, about 4 types of governance. One was monarchy, the power to govern the country, govern the nation, lay in the hands of one person, monarchy, the monarch. This gradually developed into, in certain countries, especially in England, where the monarchs claimed to rule by divine right. Divine right of governance, divine right to go rule the country. Anyway, thereafter, the second form of government, of course that ultimately had to go. The second form of government was referred to as oligarchy, where a group of people, elders, in the country, in the state, they got together to rule the country. That was the wisdom of a number of people in laying down conditions as to how the government was to run. The third form was democracy. Democracy being rule of the people. And who described it the best way possible? Anybody remembers here? Anybody remembers something called the Gettysburg Address? No. Abraham Lincoln. Government of the people, by the people and for the people. That is democracy. That is a pattern which we have chosen for us in India. And then the last was, in the absence of democracy, what else could you get? Anarchy. Where there was no governments at all. These are the 4 types. When India won its independence and we adopted the constitution as it now stands, with after almost 100 and something amendments. Initially, on the 26th of November 1949, the preamble of the constitution, to which Justice Ghosh has referred to, read, it's not the same as it is today. It read that we, the people of India, having resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, democratic republic. What do? We adopt or resolve to obtain for ourselves, first, justice. Justice, as was referred, both social, economic and political. After justice, equality. That also was referred to by him. Liberty. Liberty of conscience, liberty of freedom to think what we do, choice to take steps according to what we felt was right, according to our conscience. Nothing against the state. And then economic. These have all been reflected by Justice Ghosh. But why am I referring to these things? Because these are the 4 principles which in fact They are the very essence of social justice, if you look at it that way. Each one of these four ideals which we have referred to in the preamble are reflected all over the Constitution. Justice Ghosh referred to Article 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 is untouchability, abolition of untouchability. Do you think it has been abolished? Do you think in India this great doctrine or principle, do you think it has been really implemented? No. 68 years have passed since the Constitution was adopted. Still today, we still have this inequality. And till such time as this inequality remains, both social, economic and political, till that time that remains, I don't think we will ever be able to fulfill our democratic norms. Democracy does not mean the right to do anything which we want to do irresponsibly. The other day I had occasion to tell people, students, others, do you know how a heap of rubbish grows? Lovely clean street or footpath or pavement, one of us goes and drops an empty packet of Lay's, say, or an empty packet of something else, Mukorocho, or something like that. Following us, that 1, 2 becomes 10, becomes 20, becomes a heap. That is where we ourselves are to blame. That is where we ourselves have no sense of values. And the most important thing about democracy is when you think of somebody else, when you think of the other person and not yourself all the time. If you are able to think of another person as a person who needs assistance, well, then you could say you have really obtained democracy in its true spirit. How many of you at a traffic intersection see an old man or an old woman or a disabled person trying to cross? How many of you would go to help that person to cross the road? That is democracy. That is freedom. That is freedom in the true sense of the term. And that is social justice. Do not expect the government to be ready to do everything. It's not possible. It's not possible. The government doesn't have the means. That is why the government depends on various kind of non-government organizations, NGOs. Why? Because they don't have the means themselves. Now, that means the duty is on us. That is why when Justice Ghosh spoke about Part 4, I would like to add Part 4A, which was brought into the Constitution by the 42nd Amendment. That's right, 42nd Amendment. What did it say? It says that there are certain duties which we also need to do. Why do we have to be reminded of these duties? These should be part of our values. All people are equal, everything is fine. Liberty, equality, that's the first article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. All people are born equal. Where is that equality? Do we really have it? Well, I'm smiling and some of you are also smiling, but I feel very, very deep inside me, I feel that we have failed our country, we failed our citizens. You are the next generation, in the sense who will be taking over governance. You'll be taking over the reins of governance in all different spheres. There has been a big decline in moral values, other values, civic values. You are people who should now take upon yourself the responsibility of bringing the values back. You can be the harbingers of a very fresh generation of people who believe in social justice, possibly, and who would like to bring a social order. I'll end on a small little note. Have you heard of Confucius? You have? Yeah. Confucius wrote thousands of years ago something which is very apt even today. He said, if there's righteousness in the heart, there will be beauty of character. If there is beauty of character, there will be harmony in the house. If there is harmony in the house, there will be order in the nation. And if there is order in the nation, there will be peace in the world. Thank you.
We are in a hurry, we may not have time for questions. At least one or two questions can be taken up. Yes, yes. Yes.
Chancellor, can I take that? I'm sorry, I have another.
Honored members of the House, good afternoon one and all. My name is Francis and I'm a second year student. In this context of social justice, my question is related to the fundamental right to justice itself. And so my question can be seen on two levels. So the number of pending cases in India is more than 3 crore. According to the Delhi High Court, to clear this backlog, it will take us 464 years. So people die, their cases are still alive. So the accessibility aspect of justice is not just time consuming and expensive, it's lousy and faulty too. And this, according to me, is a huge problem. So firstly, on the first level, I would like to know what are the feasible solutions to this problem. Secondly, so I was going through the Supreme Court calendar and or the High Court calendar also. So technically the Supreme Court works for like 183 days out of 365 days. Delhi High Court doesn't work for more than 220 days. We still have summer vacations, winter vacation, Durga Puja break in the Indian judiciary. Summer vacation, which is actually a British concept. So knowing that this humongous backlog exists, our Honorable Chief Justice of India, H.N. Dattu, suggested a 365 workday policy where judges should work in shift. So my question is, why can't
Justice Lota.
I beg your pardon, Justice Lota 365 workday policy, and this suggestion got rejected by the Bar Council of India. So my question is, why can't the Indian judiciary work like any other organized workforce of the country and actually address this problem? Thank you.
Have you seen what is our population growth? Have you seen that? Have you ever think of how many judges are in India to deal with the matters? Have you taken the population, judge population and the usual population? You will be astonished. It cannot cope with the disputes between the parties in courts. That's the reason the alternative disputes resolution has also come into operation to play its role. Do you know that judgment time is being given to all other countries' judges after finishing off their hearing? They will get judgment time for a matter in accordance with the date of hearings, and that will be not less than more than the date, at least thrice the days they have heard that matter. Do you know that? You have not. Now you can grumble with the vacations enjoyed by the judiciaries. Have you ever thought of that even the Saturday and Sundays are not holidays so for the judges are concerned? Have you ever worked with them? Seen how many times they spent in their study? I am telling you my experience. When I offered judgeship, I thought I should not accept that. And in fact, I was offered 7 times in Calcutta High Court for being a judge. I had to accept subsequently because my father was also a judge. He was a Chief Justice of that High Court, and he retired and he thought that his son will be a judge, as my grandfather thought about my father. And when before I joined, I thought I will spend my days and I shall enjoy my days. But if you have any conscience in your mind, then as a judge, you cannot enjoy at all. I am telling my experience. I have never seen any picture in any hall. Still I was appointed as a judge. Right? I am restrained to go anywhere, to mix up with any persons. I have curtailed my such liberties. I have never visited ever to any of my friends' place because some request if comes through my friends in some matter pending before me. I had to say bye-bye to my all friends who are in profession. I don't meet them, exceptionally maybe in a social or gatherings, and that too not once or twice even in a year. You have not seen all these. And I must tell you, there are so many administrative works too has been undertaken by the judges. But the judges are always trying to cope up with the present situation, the social fabrics, and all other things has to be noted by them. Because we do not know every sphere, every things of the society. So you have to learn everything, and for such learning you have to spend each one of you in even the seconds. I have not seen. I used to love to read many things. I have forgot when I went to Supreme Court for last 3 years. I have also heard from my friends who were there before me. They said, yes, you will forget everything, and when you will return, then you will, again, that will come in your mind. Because the reason is your conscience. If you have a conscience to judge the matters before you, then you have many restrictions, many restraints of yourself to carry it on. If you one day, if you have to dispose of 71 matters in miscellaneous, what you will do? Saturday, Sunday? Even if we are coming here and we are going back and again we are reading. That is the problem. So this problem can be over if we keep judge ratio with the population ratio. There will be many more judges has to be appointed. Many matters which should not have come before the court should be curtailed the very first stage, as has been done in America. It has to be by way of discussion between the parties. All these steps to be taken, and you know your people in India. So how you can come across all these? That's my answer, my practical experience. Thank you.